Dark Souls 3 is the favorite Souls game of millions of fans. It's a game of absolute spectacle and some of the best bosses truly ever made. But sometimes you just want to scream at the TV, what is the hitbox on this attack? And where did that attack even come from?
Yeah, boy.
Well, I slowed things down with hitboxes on so that we could make some sense of things. This video is the final part in a series where we appreciate and commiserate over the most interesting and jankest hitboxes and frame data of every major boss in the game. This is Dark Souls 3 like you've never seen it before. Again, these final bosses we're covering are going to be ranked of how difficult I think they were to beat. This is fact, not opinion, and I will argue with you in the comments. First up, Aldrich, Devourer of Gods. Don't you hate when you think you're on a date with a lovely young lady, but when you get under her skirt, you find a writhing mass of decaying human sludge? It's happened to me too many times. Just like getting machine gunned down by this Stormcaller attack. At first glance, it looks like random shotgun bursts of death. Ow, 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 ow. But it does appear that every single one of those tiny arrows has its own hit detector, and each one sticks in place in the ground. The pillars in the arena also need to just be love tapped by Aldrich once to crumble fully. The real reason that these worlds are falling apart is because they're built by the shittiest masons in the world. The boss literally phases through the stone floor. A good floor shouldn't let you do that. In-game, he just floats around in the sky and then respawns to his next entry point. But in the lore, he's dissolving back into the goop on the floor. But anyway, this boss is lowest in difficulty ranking for today because attacks like these homing balls do very little damage, and even just panic rolling will negate the vast majority of that damage. But where things do get interesting is this wacky trailing hitbox on this beam attack. I'm not sure if it's there to roll catch you, but if it is, that's a real bastard thing to do because it's twice the size of the leading hitbox and they're both well behind the actual beam of light. To close up on this boss, it may look like he's leaving little fire poops around the place. That's kind of what I thought when I fought him. But no, he occasionally scrapes his flame blade on the floor when he spawns back in. His scythe attack, though, shows very clearly the boss weapon is actually a staff that just casts spells to create its weapon of choice. They didn't change the hit detector to match the form of the scythe, but you can't have it all. All in all, the easiest boss we're covering today. Just stick and move and you'll be fine. Up next is Oceiros, the Consumed King. But before that, for those that have been enjoying our content and want to support the channel, lend me your attention for 1 minute because I want to talk to you about today's sponsor, Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus. As an exciting turn-based tactical strategy game set in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, Tacticus is all about fast-paced strategic battles on the go. What first got me interested was the fact that the game had 4.8 stars on the App Store, and since I've been playing it, it's earned it, guys. There's over 70 Warhammer 40,000 champions you upgrade and customize. They put a lot of polish into their presentation, like they didn't have to make the game models 3D viewable, but they did. My favorite champion is Certus because I love just sniping people with a long-range, one-shot kill. It's good for the soul. And this game is actively supported as developer Snowprint Studios is always introducing fresh content, new game modes, and challenging events. Huge shout out to our sponsor for making this channel possible, and if you want to jump into the action and support the channel, download Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus with QR link on screen or link in the description. Use code HelloMar for 2,000 coins, 50 Blackstone, and 1 requisition order. And now back to the video. So, Oceiros. First thing about this guy is his tail swing. People have asked why hitboxes don't follow exactly along the model. So essentially a primitive shaped hitbox uses much less computing power because the game needs to just connect one fixed point to another fixed point and then draw a primitive shape between the two of them, whereas a complex collider, which follows a model exactly, has to calculate many different connecting points. Easy on static models, but much more intense on models whizzing through the world every frame, warping as they go. In part 1 of this series, which you can find on the channel, I explained how having a system render frames slowly can literally misposition some hit detectors in Dark Souls 3. So you can see why they were concerned about straining the TI-84 that you have running the game using only potato power. So you get things like this, which is close enough, and they did have the mercy of turning off detection on parts of the tail that stop moving before others, which I've never seen them do before. But what I've seen them do many times is jumping attacks. Before you complain about the mere 10 active frames of this jump, remember the Titanite demons from the first Dark Souls was active for 24 frames. You gotta appreciate when things are good. Like how this bite attack is also absolutely tiny compared to what it could have been. Really, you just kind of swing away at this guy phase 1, and then phase 2 happens. Luckily, when he carpet bombs you, a roll through is viable, as the hit detectors for the ice only appear as they spawn and then despawn on the tail end. Same thing with this one. Those icy crystals ain't shit, roll through them. Realistically, the only thing that commands fear in our hearts is when he just runs around like a crackhead. Frustratingly, some attacks, his arms are included hit detectors, and then on something like this, you would think they are, but nope. He just becomes a swirling, jumping ball of pain, and you should just stay away. His final cherry on top is this mad swinging lunge attack, which looks bad, but if you've played Elden Ring, again, you know how this is nowhere near the horrors that these games are capable of. Champions Gravetender and Gravetender Greatwolf. I know nothing about this boss's lore, so I'm just gonna assume this is the Dark Souls world's John Wick, and we're the guy that kills his dog. Get shit on, boy! At first glance, you will notice that Keanu's hitbox on his short sword is huge. But to be honest, if short weapons had hit detection true to their size, it would be miserable to play with. You would hit nothing. And let's be clear that your hitbox is also bullshit. The game absolutely cheats for you too. By the way, let me know if there's any skills, weapons, spells that you want to see hit detection of in the comments. The real star of this show is the big pup. Ignore this body hitbox that's not actually dealing damage here, and I can't get them to go away. I don't want to talk about it. Anyway, the real hitbox is the one forming now, which weirdly doesn't have hit detection on his mouth at all. It's just his neck and a connector on his paws. But he does actually have a bite-only attack that works the way that you would expect, but for everything else, basically just watch out for his feet. And also watch out for his eyes, because visually that's where his ice breath is coming from for some reason. He's like Cyclops from X-Men, but if he blew bubbles from his eyes like those old kids' toys. Dragonslayer Armour. There's a lot of quirky things about this boss, but one thing that isn't is his weapon hitbox. They got this hit detector tailored like a three-piece suit, but it does seem only parryable when he's holding the weapon with two hands in attacks like these. You can't actually riposte him afterwards, so it's not really worth it in my opinion. It's, I guess, just to be flashy. So his weapon is as you'd expect, but his shield is really interesting. He has this shield push attack that he does when you get too close, which only extends internally, not externally at all. It's a unique get off me type hit detector that doesn't make sense compared to other shield hitboxes until you have context of where the player is when the attack is triggered. It does get much bigger when his electricity is involved, but still inward facing. His shield gets a little more complicated though in attacks like this. You'll notice the hit detector activates up here above his head on this swing, but he does a nearly identical move right after, in which the shield doesn't become active until it impacts with the ground, just about. These are visually slightly different attacks, but with significant different interpretations on when hit detection should be active. This is why I think that is. The first attack actually includes a function that allows him to change his root motion or position quicker than normal, so the attack is viable to close in on you when you're at a distance. Hence why they activated the hit detector higher up and earlier, because he's swinging for you as you try to get away. The second attack doesn't allow changes in root motion, locking him in place, so it's more of a variant when you're right on him. So I think mercifully they didn't place the hit detector active so early at the top of the swing, only the bottom, to allow you to escape. That's my theory, or they had two separate teams and they didn't realize that they didn't agree on when to activate hit detection, but that doesn't make me sound smart, so come on. Other fun stuff for him is this smash attack is only area of effect. No hit detection on the weapon itself at all. And then we get to these cucks that like to just watch from a distance. The laser beam poses no threat itself as it slices across the bridge and then way up into the sky. A moment later, you get some fire explosions to fuck you over right when you're about to beat the boss. Between that and the butterfly attack, chipping away at your health, I always just put the big guy down quick as possible to avoid even interacting with these two goobers. Dancer of the Boreal Valley. Pretty standard stuff here. There's a reason this boss is generally loved, and it's not because of the assless chaps. She's got a firm but fair hit detector on her weapon, and you can't cheapen the fight by just walking around her. That armed hit detector is literally bigger than the sword itself. She's also programmed to do her slap attack when the game detects that the player has been staring at her cheeks for too long. But it only covers her lower forearm, not the upper arm, giving you some wiggle room on positioning. The two biggest questions beyond that I got, first being about her grab, which has the same hit detection as the slap, so there isn't some massive grab detector like some people bitch about. She does move more slowly than other bosses, so it makes it more difficult for you to roll with the grab because it's going to be active for longer. So roll away or roll through it is the best play. And then finally, questions about her spin move. It's not messing around. Hit capsules on her upper arms are large enough that her entire head and upper torso are also part of the attack. But you'll notice both swords start together as she comes down for another rotation and then split wide as she swings. That is your optimal location to roll through, as it's a smaller obstacle for you to clear. Also, between her active hit detectors of each swing is 18 frames of opportunity to roll, collect yourself, roll again. And then the final spin at the end of the combo occurs in place and does not allow the boss to change its root position, so it's just a matter of rolling out of there. It's tricky, but doable. One final quirk is the dark AoE blast has an odd timing on hit detection. The special effects spawn, swirl, and are almost entirely gone by the time the damage detector triggers. Could be one of those things where it just felt better to play against having that timing, and it happens all very quickly anyway. Lothric, Younger Prince. Look at that tiny little pencil dick of a sword hit detector. They really did him dirty. This is unusually proportional to the weapon model for FromSoft, so I'm open to opinions as to why for him specifically they didn't inflate it like usual. Could be to give you more leniency when dodging him as he teleports around, but also, despite having a flaming sword, there is no flame AoE hit detection either. So things start off pretty merciful for the player, but he does have some pretty punishing AoE moves as the fight goes on. Like his light slam attack actually spawns the hit detectors before he actually slams on the ground, so it's earlier than you would expect. And then they expand further when he hits the ground. His flame AoE is also satisfying to watch because all it is each flame's expansions and becoming the spawn point for the next one, but no actual hit detection on the flame trail itself. In practice, it's more of a flame wall than a floor is lava type situation. But beyond that, his parry timings are annoyingly inconsistent. Like this attack, the parry is when the wrist hits you, like most other bosses. Here it is in game. But then there is these attacks where the parry is way back here, even before the hitbox is even active. Same thing with this one. That last one is identical to that first attack. Weirdly, FromSoft sometimes has two identical looking animations in game, but for some reason don't have the same parry timing. I have no idea why. Overall, there's not too much to this fight because he has a limited moveset and his brother doesn't do much but shoot a projectile occasionally for you to deal with and be weirdly handsy. Nameless King. Now we're getting to legendary difficulty. I just want to start that as an avid Tube fan, I was well pleased to see that they brought it back for the flame attacks. There's just something about saying, let's spawn a bunch of flames, slap a tube in the middle, get tubed on, nerds. And what's also very fun is how big and scary this electric strike is, but it just amounts to an adorable little deadly dot. Or the tiny little feedy hitboxes that appear when the Drake lands. Sometimes, not always, for some freaking reason. But eventually things stop being cute and you have to deal with shit like this. Big AoE and a girthy weapon hitbox on top of it. Oof. Once he is off the Drake though, his weapon hitbox magically reduces. And thank God for that. But also some very interesting stuff starts happening, like this. Notice the weapon dips sharply because he lowers his arms and does a full extend, which I'm not sure if they did to just throw us off on the timing. It's like, hey, I'm gonna stab you. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. And you know, I'm not sure the point of him doing this attack when you are so close. I get the swing attack, but goddamn, that wind blast doesn't start till way past the character and it goes for miles. Maybe it's there to punish your coward of a summon who's just running away. I don't know. Now, to finish this guy, his electric AoE attacks are brutal. His electric rod smash has hit detection before it meets the ground, and Jesus H. Christ, it is one hell of a pain circle, which both spawns and despawns before the explosion is halfway done. A similar blast is handled totally differently on this two-hand smash though. It lands and hit detection spawns and expands with the blast visual, leaving behind an electric center that then splits off. One final note, his grab is equally brutal because his entire weapon is the detector for the grab. So it isn't just the tip that will spear you. If any of you touches the entire thing, you're fucked. Sister Friede. She has a grab that only people who have played this game know the terror of. But what's great about it is that when you're hit by it, it doesn't just teleport you into position, but instead starts an animation of your character flying into the air and then blends her hooking animation and yours. It looks great. No grab teleporting to piss people off. What a win. And by the way, I'm curious how many people didn't know that she jumps over you when she goes invisible. That's why things crash and break from the direction she's coming from. Not just because she's a clumsy bitch. She just jumped across the whole place and crashed into those tables and shit. Fun facts. All right, now, I know people want to see hit detection, frame data stuff. Like, it's interesting that this lava pouring doesn't hurt you at all here. But to be honest, as soon as I saw the glorious thigh gap on this geezer, I got really sidetracked and I was trying to see if you can go in between his legs by just standing there and not take damage. I tried so many times, but kept getting barely clipped. But after way longer than I really want to admit, this happened. The greatest question in gaming, has been answered. You're welcome. But anyway, once the big guy really gets going, you are absolutely cooked.
Okay, we are cooked.
As he swings his fire pot from side to side, he also has a hit capsule extending into his body. Penis hugger strats are not viable. On other swings though, his leading arm has hit detection, but not the trailing one. So you can just roll through the first arm and not even worry about the second. It's always interesting stuff like that, where they just handle things differently on very similar attacks. No more than how FromSoft handles fire attacks. Because I swear to God, there is like no two fire attacks that they've ever handled the same. But eventually you do kill this poor woman's father, and she's double pissed, so she gets double the weapons. Her black flame spins also have hit detection, not on the flame, but instead just close to her. It's not as wild as what I covered in part 1 of this series. Good God. But say what you will about Sister Friede being so difficult, but her biggest AoE smash is just a fraction of as big a detector as it could have been. But unfortunately, her entire body in phase 3 is part of the grab detector. Yes, they figured it's the final phase, we gotta make it harder somehow. Demon Prince. First time I started drinking, I had no idea there was different alcohol percentages in drinks. Like, I thought a shot was the same thing as a tiny beer. It's all just get loose juice to me, right? So anyway, I was at a work party and I poured an entire pint of Jameson whiskey and proceeded to drink the entire thing like it was a Bud Light. Now, I had only had Olive Garden wine before this, so I just assumed all alcohol tasted like shit. So down the hatch, an entire pint's worth of whiskey shots went. I have not drank a drop of Jameson since that day. My God, I was obliterated in front of all my coworkers. I called an older coworker MILF, and that I'd rather date her than her daughter, who was actually my age. I rambled about a family member probably being gay for like 20 minutes to my boss, all while my coworkers are trying to do a white elephant gift exchange. Shockingly, I did not throw up. I must have photosynthesized the whiskey, I don't know. Fuck that jacked steroid guy. I am the real liver king. So anyway, I end up passing out in one of my coworkers' kids' rooms because the event was at his really giant house. The kids were out of town, so he basically tucked me in, shout out Michael, but I woke up in this kid's room having like no memory of how I got there. That was a weird morning. I'm sure there's a lesson in there somewhere, and it has nothing to do with the demon princes from Dark Souls 3. I just hate this boss, and I refuse to spend any more time on them than the agonizing attempts I had when I beat them years ago. So, I hope you learned something from the clips the editor put up, and thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Darkeater Midir. You remember when we talked about how this game has certain hitboxes attached to frame rate? This is a great example of that. That's the difference between a low frame rate and regular frame rate on his flame attack. It should not be built frame rate dependent. Oh well. Also, this boss does have one of the funniest looking fire attack hitboxes. You got tubed before, now get ready to get noodled. It's like a giant flame pool noodle. It's the most structured flame attack I have ever seen them do. Compare that to the unstructured death spread of this flame attack, and ignore those circular hit detectors around his wings and feet. They're nothing to be concerned about. It does appear safer if you get behind him though on this one, rather than just risk running in front. But just existing is risky when he goes full Godzilla for this one. The laser attacks has two parts. The laser and then the explosion after it. Personally, I don't love attacks that are more spectacle than substance. You will notice though that close to him on his right side never gets covered like it does on his left. So essentially run in and stick to his right and back side. For his giant AoE explosion, again, it doesn't cover as far as you would think given the visuals. And finally, for his melee attacks, do not roll towards his outer side because the hit detector extends well past that side. Instead, roll towards his head, because oddly enough, it's his neck that is like the crushing detector, but his head is totally safe. Tons of his melee attacks have a far extending hit detector on those elbows, so stick in. And finally, his big lunge attack has a dead zone underneath for you to give his belly a little scratchy before you panic roll to avoid his feet. And finally, the hardest boss in Dark Souls 3, Slave Knight Gael. Difficult, yes, but I respect the hell out of him. There is no tomfoolery on hit detection for his standard sword swings. Just you needing to get good. Even his detectors to prevent you from strafing too close aren't bloated circles, but capsules that follow exactly along his arm. His AoE smash attack has a quirk in that they didn't bother putting a hit detector on his right arm ever, even though it is involved in the attack as well. So technically, a roll right is safer, but I will say his AoE blast does start before his sword even causes a blast on the ground, so it's a few frames earlier than you'd think. His grab attack also only covers his weapon arm, but also includes his body. So don't roll into him or left because you could get clipped by that arm. Just roll right because yet again, there is no hit detector on that other arm. But the teleport is a little bit wonkier than usual. You get cut in and then you get pushed out again. It's a little goofy. Now, for the biggest questions I got about this boss. First up, the cape. Where the hell are the hit detectors, right? Okay, so weirdly on his cape attacks, his sword hit detection is suddenly not covering his full sword. I don't know why. But anyway, here's where the hit detectors are on his cape attack itself. Only the cloth, nothing else. And you'll notice closer to him, you have a bit of a gap where you can avoid damage, but only on some swings, annoyingly. Like this leaping swing? No. But the follow-up swing? Yes. How would you know that? I don't know. But you can always depend on old reliable, avoiding damage close to him in this big swinging cape attack at least. And if you didn't get bamboozled by his cape, I know you got by this shit. You dodge the first blast and you think you're in the clear, but you never expected dad to actually come home with the milk and whack. Shout out Gigadad. Now, before we go, I have a big announcement. The channel will now be dropping weekly videos every Friday. Frame data, Dad Souls, Babe 1, Babe 2 playthroughs, you name it, every Friday. Also, if you want to support us directly, videos will be available ad-free and a week early on our Patreon. Also, remember to download Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus in the description. It's actually a lot of fun and it helps the channel too. Finally, please consider subscribing so you don't miss those weekly uploads. But as always, thanks so much for watching.